women impact democratic politics up and down the ballot and in all sorts of ways.
If you are a woman who is seeking leadership, be really clear about how you want to do things differently.
The best thing to do to establish yourself as progressive, go to as many doors as you can and talk to as many voters as you can.
There's never been a time where women are more powerful than this moment. And so we get the privilege to model compassionate leadership, but you must do that by having strong boundaries.
Hello, and welcome to the NDTC monthly Q&A expert panel. My name is Allyson. I'm NDTC's Chief of Staff and Operations, and I'm so excited to be here moderating with you all today. As I come to you from the reproductive health, rights, and justice space, and a career at Planned Parenthood in the organizing and electoral campaigns department for about 10 years. So I'm really excited to be engaging in this conversation and talking about how women impact democratic politics up and down the ballot and in all sorts of ways. So we're going to go ahead and get started with introductions. I want to take a minute to introduce you all to Ruby, Elyssa, and Kandice, who are here to help guide us throughout this conversation today. So I'm going to turn it over to Ruby to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Allyson, and thank you all for being with us. We appreciate you. I'm Ruby. I'm RPD to my friends, and I serve as founder and executive director of Elect Black Women PAC, which is a political action organization committee. And our mission is clear. We help elect Black women to every level of leadership across the country. And so there are over 500,000 elected positions, and we are quite far away from achieving parity. So my job is to help raise money, amplify the candidacies, and tell the stories of all the incredible women who are running. And to date, we have endorsed over 150 Black women running for office and have 70 women sitting in elected office, everything from statewide judicials, sheriffs in New Orleans, down to city council. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate being with you today.
Amazing. Elyssa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. And similarly, thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Elyssa Fader. I am the co-founder and executive director of Rising Organizers and Rising Organizers Action. We train people who are everyday people on community organizing skills and how they can build power in their communities. And more to the point of this panel, I was the training director at Emily's List for 2.5 years and was the creator of their Ignite Change Fellowship, which focuses on making sure underrepresented women have access to all of the trainings and skills and community that they need to run for office and win. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you today and to talk about, with these very wonderful, experienced women, talk about a little bit about my expertise with running for office.
Amazing. And Kandice, will you round us out?
Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning. Good afternoon, maybe good morning to some. I'm Kandice Harris. I am a political organizer in Chicago, Illinois. I've been working in Democratic politics for the better part of like 7 years full-time now, but a long time before that as a volunteer and a local leader, like a lot of y'all on this call today. I am really proud to be the Midwestern pod director at an organization called Run for Something. We're a partner to NDTC, and our bread and butter is helping first, second, and third time candidates run for state and local office. And over 50% of all the candidates that we endorsed are women. And a lot of the program that we build are particularly around getting more women to run, particularly for state and local office. And while I've been at Run for Something, I've developed a training specifically for Black women who are running for the first time in state and local office. And I'm also constantly working with my teams to develop programs and also address the needs of women who are stepping up to run in very, very down ballot races, all like everything from, I think county coroner is probably the most interesting race to school board. So glad to be here.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I cannot wait to be learning from you myself during this panel. And this is a great segue into our very first question. According to the Brookings Institute, we know that 2/3 of men are recruited into elected office. And NDTC has dealt with this issue head on. We've created curriculum directly to support local leaders in trying to figure out how to identify, recruit, and support new people to run for office. And we were deeply surprised to find that there wasn't a lot of resources out there already created in this work. So I'd love to hear from you all, and really starting with Ruby. What is it that we need to be doing to better encourage women to run for office? And how can we be all in our different vantage points as organizations and local party leaders encourage more women to run for office?
I love this question. So first, we start with the women who are here, who are serving as volunteers. We need to ask those women who are already giving their time, their talent, and their treasures to our party to run. And not just when we want to have our own interests represented in terms of policy, but because we know that, again, there's over 500,000 elected positions. And because of organizations like Contest Every Race, we are now seeing that, in rural communities, not just urban and suburban, women are already doing the hard work of showing up, opening up the building for meetings, putting together agendas, running Zooms. We need to start and ask those women first. So I always like to start there because far too many women that I know who give their time and their talents to our party. And when a big opportunity opens up, we're often looking for that rising star who has the great oratory skills and not valuing the women who are our sustainers. They sustain our party. So I want to make sure I acknowledge those women and say how important it is to start there. And then to organizations like Contest Every Race. We partnered with them last cycle because we recognize that Black women who live in rural communities, much like the one I grew up in Louisiana, were not being asked to run at all if they didn't have a state party, because not every county and parish has a party. And so organizations like, Contest Every Race and NDTC, as women are enrolling in our trainings, we need to say, hey, thank you for coming to this training. When are you going to file? Because again, this notion that we have an option not to run is a narrative that is not serving us. When you look at conservative leadership, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a great example. Like, we have to be catapulting our women to the top level of leadership and policy making and saying that it is okay to take up power and to govern. So, we have lots of women who are talented. We're seeing women run and win all over the country. It's just time to change the narrative and also go to the women who are already doing this work saying it's your time. We are excited to raise money and to physically show up and support you by knocking doors, making phone calls, and helping on election day. So we do those things. We'll see that in the same way it's serving, other parties and other political interests, that when we get clear on that narrative, we'll start to see a dramatic change in the number of women who are in leadership positions.
I love that. Elyssa, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Ruby said, and I want to really just re-emphasize a couple of points that she made. The first is on asking. I mean, Emily's list talks about all the time about how you need to ask women 7 times or something like that to run for office, far more times. And as Ruby points out, often the people that we should be asking are not necessarily the usual suspects, which is to say that they are not driven by certain patriarchal norms of what a leader looks like. So they may be really thoughtful or quieter or really logistically oriented rather than being people who take up a ton of space. So being thoughtful about what a leader actually means to you and how you can identify those people and not just react to the ways you've seen leadership happen before. Absolutely. The other thing that Ruby said that I think is really worth highlighting is the willingness to show up and support women when they're running for office in terms of fundraising. There are a lot of resources out there. Emily's list is one of them. I don't work there anymore, but nonetheless, a lot of resources out there for folks who want to learn how to fundraise, but it's really hard to do by yourself. And that means those of us who are in community with these folks who want to be supportive of their campaign have to be putting ourselves out there too. We have to be willing to do hard work to make sure that the people that we are basically nominating are as successful as possible. So I would certainly look to the resources that already exist. And I would also think about how you, as a person deeply invested in your community, can step out of your comfort zone, both in terms of identifying leaders and in terms of how you can support them when it comes to moving them in the political pipeline.
So I'm also going to just plus one, like just build upon, because everything that Ruby and Elyssa said is absolutely on point. As far as resources, I wanted to start there. Make it easy. Give people, like all of these resources exist. And what I've found, especially when you're working with folks who are running for like very like unknown offices like library trustee, which right now we have to elect more women to those because people are trying to take them over and ban books. So for instance, giving that person the tools, having like, all those resources in a place where people don't have to look for them. Because a lot of time women almost feel like they have to be over prepared to run for office. And it's like, no, our organization, especially run for something, that's what we're set up for. We will give you all the things you need to learn the skills, connect you to Emily's List, connect you to Elect Black Women, wherever you need to be connected to learn the things you need to learn, and then we'll help you file. And then support. And I've heard this throughout. I think that cannot be said too much. A lot of times when people run for office, they feel absolutely alone. And women in particular, we have all sorts of other responsibilities that we're usually carrying. People normally people cannot quit their jobs. They definitely cannot stop being caregivers to people who are dependent upon them. And that particularly affects women. So as an organization or even as a local political party, being proactive with that support and being constant with it. Sometimes we don't always ask for what we need, and especially first-time candidates sometimes don't know what they need. So being there to just meet them where they are, and support actually is probably one of the things that from candidates that I've worked with has been the most valuable thing, because nobody should feel like they're doing this alone. And especially, because running for office is tough, but we can make it easier because of the things that we have experience in.
I love this. And I appreciate you all so very much. One of the biggest things we say at NDTC is we are collaborative, not competitive. And that is something that all of us across the political spectrum have a shared goal around. We want to make sure that we are electing people who align with progressive and democratic ideals to make the change we want in the world. And I appreciate how much you all lifted each other up in that conversation, as well as the work that all of our organizations do to really feed this ecosystem of support that we need, because we know there is not enough women running, staffing offices, and in leadership positions.
It takes courage to run for office. Stepping out of your comfort zone is hard, but so important for creating the change that you want to see in the world. To take that next step, we've linked our free Getting Started checklist in the description below. It'll walk through steps like how to start your campaign committee, how to get your name on the ballot, and how to create and even track your budget. So download our expert-created Getting Started checklist now to kick your campaign off on the right track. Now, back to the panel.
One thing you all very much touched upon was the way that we view and have specific ideas of what a leader looks like. And what we know from a lot of research is that inclusive, collaborative leadership styles, the leadership styles that women are more socialized to develop, are actually the most effective ways to lead. But they're not always recognized as that. And top-down management still tends to be the norm. What are some of the advice that you all have for women who are navigating that difference in leadership styles and really establishing themselves? Elyssa, as someone who's really started that Ignite,
I was going to say,
and really coach women in this,
I'm ready.
What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm ready on this one. So I a couple of things. The first is that politics is changing really rapidly. And in the best ways. We are having more diverse, more folks of color in leadership at all sorts of different organizations. And also, we are products of the systems in which we were raised, for lack of a better term. And so it's really important to me to model the kind of leadership that I want to see in the spaces that I work in, and to recognize when symptoms of white supremacy, symptoms of hierarchical, negative hierarchical structures are really impeding our ability to do the work. And so I would say a few things to this question. The first is that if you are a woman who is seeking leadership or is in leadership, to be really clear about how you want to do things differently and where can you find allies in the workplace. it can be really challenging to try to do politics in a new way when we've kind of always done politics in this sort of narrow box, which I would argue is not really working. Or has not worked in the past. Thank you, Ruby. I appreciate that. And so doing things in a new way both takes courage and support, but also takes really recognizing where are you coming from? How are you replicating systems that have not worked for us in the past? And how can you change them? One of the things that pains me is when women or anyone gets to a high level of leadership and they're replicating old habits that they really didn't like when they were coming up. We don't have to do the same toxic workplace environment stuff that we were raised with. We just don't. That's sort of the main thing. I think also being really clear about how you want that structure to look different. You know, at Rising Organizers, we have I'm in charge, right? But we also have we call it a power donut, which is basically a bullseye in which different levels of the organization are able to contribute in different ways. And we did that on purpose because we wanted to figure out and play around with new models of leadership and how we could build more collaborative systems into the actual structure of the organization. We have the luxury to do that. We're a new organization, and frankly, we're run by volunteers for half a decade. So we have that sort of startup energy, but being really intentional, I think, is really key to both when you're in leadership and you're trying to figure it out, and when you have the opportunity to design what your leadership model looks like.
Absolutely. Our staff can tell you, we are constantly talking about how internally we are building the organization of the world we want to exist, not the one that currently does. So Kandice, Ruby, in your leadership positions, how are you advising folks to really embrace and move through these challenge points?
So when I first heard this question, I thought about just the things that we teach people during their campaigns, the best practices, but that can also carry into their elected leadership. So for instance, building a collaborative environment of support and folks who will be there with you after you get elected. So we talk to folks about the importance of having a kitchen cabinet, what that is, and why it's important to have more than one person and more than one perspective at the table. Also, too, we focus on candidates running strong grassroots campaigns, and especially for women, because let's be honest, in some of these races that people are winning in, it is tougher than when they get in office, some of the things that they're having to fight. So really being intentional about all of the support that you've built throughout your campaign, all of the contact that you've built, continuing to carry that. And it's really not just a campaign, it's a movement. Bring those people with you when you're in office. If you're in, if you ran for school board and now you're on the school board and you've won, making sure you invite those people to your meetings, having that support there, and also continuing to have those conversations with the people who have been listening to you and working with you from the beginning is really important. And I think just kind of focusing on being a community-minded leader, which I think this question kind of talks to a little bit. A lot of time women, like you said, we've been indoctrinated to think that way, but that is not a negative thing at all. And it actually keeps you much closer to the issues and keeps you much more in tune with the needs of your community, and making sure that you continue to keep those lines of communication open, especially when you get an elected office.
Really appreciate that, Kandice. Ruby, do you have anything you want to add to this one?
Just really quickly, what I'll offer is one of the things I coach, and having worked with women who run for Congress, the judge, Metro Water, the thing I emphasize is to be the most compassionate leader, you actually have to be really good with boundaries. And not just boundaries physically, but boundaries around your emotions, your intellectual gifts, your time, and your expectations. Oftentimes we are told that it's important to be kind. That means you're always saying yes. And when you're running for office, you can't say yes to everything. That is a very different reality than being a community volunteer, because you are transitioning to be a public servant, which means that you have to be able to meet all the needs of your constituents. And so boundaries become how you become a compassionate leader, because boundaries show people that you love yourself first, because how you treat yourself, people pay attention. And then how you're treating your staff, And you have to model that, because if you look at it in terms of the arc of human history, there's never been a time where women are more powerful than this moment. And so we get the privilege to model compassionate leadership, but you must do that by having strong boundaries.
I just absolutely love that so much, right? We are privileged to be able to push and change the norms around leadership and form the organizations and campaigns, again, of the world that it should be, not the world that we currently have. So I appreciate you highlighting that wonderful, lucky space that we all get to find ourselves in. And I've heard you all name a couple of different things about the variety of different offices that we really need women leading in. And right now, there are so many emerging political issues that are directly impacting women, from the abortion rights fight that we're seeing all across the country and within the federal government, seeing attacks on gender affirming care, and education and ability to have free thinking in this country. We are leaders, we are community members. So what advice do you have for campaigns on how to best engage women voters in these issues and really motivate them to support your campaign?
Oh, yes. I have lots of opinions about this. So one, you have to start early. You cannot meaningfully engage someone, just a human to human. If I show up last minute asking for something, then it's hard to build trust, because if that's something the person values, their time, so it takes time. So I want to just name that. We are at the beginning of the 24 electoral cycle. Oftentimes, down ballot candidates are waiting too late. And so you're not able to engage voters because you quite frankly run out of time. I tell anyone, if you are thinking of running for office, whether it's Congress or school board, you need to give yourself 2 years, because you quickly find out how hard it is if your team needs to make 15,000 phone calls. Those phone calls are not going to make themselves. You can have the best dialer on the planet, but there are some logistical things you must take into consideration. And if building and maintaining relationships is important with community partners, the first way you value them is by bringing them into the conversation about your campaign, your leadership, and your candidacy as early as you can, not 30 days before GOTV. Because then it feels like you might have an agenda. Not just when the fall of Roe Wade, because then people might feel like you have an agenda. Not just when you need Black people to vote for you. Folks might feel like you got an agenda. The other thing I like to pose to folks, because I am a Christian, my beliefs, my work sits at the intersection of politics and my faith. Please, if you are not willing to let someone into your synagogue, your temple, don't come to Christian churches asking to be in our pulpits. And that's one of those things where when you talk about maintaining relationships on these very difficult issues, because let's be clear, the word abortion is not used in the Bible. And so when you're talking about these issues and you're bringing in different constituencies, you sometimes have to give some political education, and that takes time, because you don't want people to feel insulted, like you don't honor their beliefs because you got a campaign to run. So those are some things that I feel like we are better about that now more than ever, because we have more organizers and activists in democratic politics and positions of leadership than before. But we still have a lot of room to grow, and you have to give yourself years to do that work so that the interactions are not transactional, which is the quickest way to break trust and to make people concerned about what is your agenda.
I appreciate that so deeply, Ruby. This is a conversation we're having as leaders. Our goal is to motivate our communities, not dictate to our communities. Kandice, I wonder what you have to offer in this one. I see that excitement in your face.
Oh, no, I was saying that part. I wanted to come off mute. I thought I was in church, but I was like, let me not interrupt. That don't really work in Zoom. But all of that, one of the first things that we ask candidates when they first come to run for something, because they find us from all sorts of places, is we say, what are you doing now? Like, how are you involved in your community now? Each one of those issues, you can find an issue advocacy group, you can find an organization, you can find a book club in your community, whatever that looks like, that you should be engaging with long before you think about running for office, because for you to have messaging and outreach plans that is actually in tune with the needs of the people that you're seeking to serve, you have to be in community with them, and you need to listen. I always encourage folks who are getting ready to run for office, like anytime you're in a space with folks, listen, learn. You talk 20%, they talk 80%, and keep up with what's being said, because there are so many issues facing all of our communities, and all of these issues are things that are important. And candidates are coming to campaigns with issues that are important to them as well. But a lot of times I tell people, hey, you have to kind of meet your community too. So for instance, if there are things going on with gender affirming care in your community and you're running for state legislature, again, also the issues have to address the office that you're running for too. They have to meet there too. Maybe you should make that a priority in your campaign, because you've been hearing it over and over and over again, and you've been engaged in those conversations. And then maybe you should even bring some of those folks who are leaders in those spaces to the table to help you write these messaging and outreach plans as well.
Absolutely. And Elyssa, this is the work of organizers. This is what we do.
Very true. Yeah, I was going to say, in addition, +1, won't repeat any of it. Agreed on all fronts. I also want to say that this is not easier said than done, because it's actually, once you get into the swing of it, it's pretty easy, but it can feel like there's not a lot of resources out there for you to learn how to do this work. And so, though I was not intending on plugging, I am going to just say that Rising Organizers Action that's our job. Like Rising Organizers, and I'll drop our website in the chat. I know the Rising Organizers website was in there earlier. Rising Organizers Action exists to train you on how you can build these kinds of relationships in your community. So if you're feeling like this is something I really want to do and it feels hard to access those resources, please know that is the purpose of our organization. And so I agree with everything that's been said and would love to help anybody that needs help.
Thank you all so much. And for those of you who are listening in on this amazing conversation, just a reminder, our Q&A box is open. If you want to drop questions, I'm going to give our panelists one more question for me and then turn it over to the questions that you all are really looking for information on. But so to really close this out, I want to hear a little bit more about what advice you all would give to those folks on the call. How have you mentored people into these leadership roles, and how would you encourage others to go about doing it? And Elyssa, do you want to get us started off, right? You're recruiting organizers every day.
I am, and it's the best job. So yeah, I mean, this is the part of politics that is my absolute favorite part. I think that leadership development, giving people the capacity to fight for what they know is right, and just the framework to be successful at it, is the cornerstone of my career for a reason. It's my favorite thing to do. And I am very proud that both at Emily's List and at Rising Organizers and Rising Organizers Action and all the other things, I've been able to work with some really talented women. And actually, one of the alumni of our programs is now the training director at Emily's List. So in organizing, we often say you want to organize yourself out of a job. I did it. I love it. It's great. So, I think that this all goes back to what Ruby and Kandice, we were all saying earlier about being able to identify leaders and really give them the coaching and support that they need. Because often people don't tell women, particularly women of color, I say this as a white lady, but I work with a lot of women of color, don't tell women of color about how talented they are. They are talented, they are not, but being told that out loud is something that a lot of people have never experienced. And I feel like 85% of my leadership development is just seeing people for their true selves and telling them that I see them, telling them that I think that they are capable of doing work they'd never thought of doing before. And that belief, that support, and then supporting them along with it, not just saying it, but really helping them along the way, has, for what I can tell, been really transformative for people. So this goes back to what Ruby was saying earlier also about building these long-term relationships. You can't just show up and say you like somebody and then leave. You need to do this long-term support work, which of course is what Kandice and Ruby are doing in their jobs every day. But that is something that is really important when it comes to identifying and lifting up the women in your life.
Yeah, Ruby, I see that energy. You want to come in?
I'm just over here just like, oh, that's love. I love that so much. So recently, one, supporting other women means like real support, y'all. That's letters of recommendation, job references in politics. I mean, because it's so relational that you cannot hold perfectionist ideals around other women's work that you don't hold for men. A man could show up wrinkled pants, look like whatever. A woman shows up with no makeup, no lipstick. So one, you just have to humanize the experiences of other women because it's not monolithic. Like you don't have to wear makeup if you want to, cool. If you don't, that's fine. You know, you are wonderfully made and enough. So it's things like that we need to acknowledge. We're still a part of broader society, Instagram, social media. When you are a candidate and your online appearance looks different than your in-person appearance, you know, there's a lot of things that women are dealing with that are like a death by 1,000 cuts. So to what Elyssa said, words of affirmation matter, particularly to women of color who are running, because the bodies that we're in, we already are having a whole lived experience, and then we're deciding to run for office, the ultimate form of scrutiny on top of that. So those words of affirmation matter. And then I'll go back to, you know, you are only as good as the leaders you produce. I tell everybody, if I want to see how transformational somebody is, who did you make? Point them out. Because just because you are a woman does not mean you are holding doors open for other women. And there is a very real thing about we are as women processing across lines of difference around generations. What does love, support, and affirmation mean? My mother was born in 1944, the first year of the baby boomers. She had me at 36. It's a very different universe than me having my daughter at 36, who is now going to be the high school graduating class of 2035. So when you think about her grandmother was born in 1944, she's going to be finishing high school in 2035. That is a whole lot of life. The world and society has changed. So I say that to say, be mindful that even if you don't feel like you have political power or lots of influence, who are you helping? Because we are all committed to sowing seeds in a garden that we might not ever see grow.
I mean, you already have me sitting here thinking of my lineage, going Shoshana, going Elyssa, naming the women who have helped me get to where I'm at. Kandice, I'm sure you're going through a similar moment of excitement around the people you've contributed to as well.
Honestly, you know, I think one thing too, sometimes I used to think, even in my own personal journey, like, I can't do anything for anyone. I barely know what I'm doing for myself. But just like Ruby and Elyssa have both said, affirming women that you are around, that even your contemporaries. I have so much support from like people who are contemporaries with me in this space. And a lot of us have met each other at different walks of life. And I hope that we will all end up winning one day. And I think that's part of that process as well. So affirming +1 to that, also +1 to just being like, to supporting. You have to do the real work. Just like Ruby said, you got to do the recommendations and you got to, you know, make the relational stuff. So yeah, all of that. And there was one more thing that I was going to say, but Ruby and Elyssa, I think, covered most of it. Yeah, just holding the door open because someone held the door open for you.
Truly. And y'all, I think the biggest thing I hope you take away that I'm really, really internalizing from our conversation so far is that changing this dynamic requires all of us to do real work and to really invest in relationships and support with each other, because that level of community and investment is the transformational act. That is what actually changes us as people and the people we're investing in. So I deeply love it. And I just got to throw that shout out that support also comes from our purse strings. We have to be donating. I love getting call time calls being like, save your time. I already love and believe in you. How much money do you need? Give me a dollar amount right away. Let's go for it. So I hope that you're thinking now about who are you supporting? Who is your support team? And how are you making sure that support is deep and real in your community? Y'all, I'm going to jump over to our Q&A. Thank you all for adding a couple additional questions here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up these questions to our panelists, and we're going to try to get through as many as we can. We may not hear from all three of our panelists on each question in an attempt to make sure all of you hear a little bit of this wisdom we have to offer, y'all. And so I want to combine a couple of questions, because one question off the bat is about how do we really establish ourselves as progressive Democrats in nonpartisan races? How do you all see that coming to bear? And I think, Ruby, you're working often in the South. I wonder if you could really speak to this.
Well, one, wear blue. Get everything in every shade of blue, because you don't have to worry about, so wear blue. The other thing is where you physically show up tells people a lot about the issues that you care about. And so, prioritize the community events and places and spaces where the voices and the opinions and the experience of those voters matter to you. That sends a lot of messages about what you care about. And last but not least, I cannot underscore this enough, write something. I mean, please write something. I know conventional wisdom is set up your website with a donate button. That's the most important thing. But when you're in a nonpartisan race, especially if you're talking about school board, since the 2020 elections, people just hold a higher bar. And so sign up for that account on Medium, get that Grammarly popping and write something so that people can see your beliefs in your words and you control your narrative.
I love that. Does anybody else want to offer anything for this one?
So just really quickly, the word progressive is not a monolith either. So showing up as your authentic self, like Ruby said, in spaces that matter, in the communities that matter to you, and just speaking up on those issues. Honestly, I think when I truly think of like the best thing to do to establish yourself as progressive, go to as many doors as you can and talk to as many voters as you can and talk to them about the issues that you care about. But don't feel like progressive is a box. I, especially as a Black woman, have felt that at times. People are like, you're not progressive because you don't look like a middle-aged white college educated man, so like don't feel like you have to be in a box either. Showing up as your authentic self is enough to establish yourself as the progressive.
I appreciate that so much, and especially that show up in your community, show you are community minded. Being there, doing the real work is the best way to establish yourself. So we have two different questions that are quite similar about the resources that we need to support campaigns when we are in a very male-dominated area or a male-dominated local party. And how do we build a real female-oriented kitchen cabinet? So could you all speak to some of those resources? And Elyssa, I want to turn it over to you first, coming from that perspective of developing organizers and training women through Emily's list. How do you recommend that people really build that woman-centered support system?
It's a great question. I mean, I would recommend starting with the women in your lives who already love and support you. They probably have amazing skills at their disposal already. They may not have thought about applying it to politics before, but that's where all of them working together can really come in. So if someone is really involved in the PTA, they're probably great for your kitchen cabinet for your race for school board, even if they've never thought about the actual electoral mechanics before. That might take some persuasion on your part, but again, saying to people that you believe in them is going to get you really far. And then it's just I think it's also just a matter of identifying which of the many resources out there are right for you. There are a lot of organizations out there that support people in lots of different ways, and you might feel overwhelmed by them at first, and that's okay. Figuring out how you can reach out to different organizations, see who gets back to you. It's always kind of the first step. See who really resonates with you, see who really is in line with your values. These are all ways for you to settle into an organization or two that can really supply you with the individual help that you might need. So really making sure you do your research, reach out to folks, and make sure that your kitchen cabinet is full of people that really support you, are some of your favorite thinkers in your community, even if they've never been in politics per se before.
I love that. Ruby or Kandice, anything to offer here?
Yeah, so I've run for office twice, state house, state senate. Didn't get the outcome I wanted. Credible showing. My whole staff was all women until we got to GOTV. And even when we were putting in signs, our sign delivery teams, was women rolling in pickup trucks. So one, think about what you need on your campaign, and then start. If you're not a part of a woman's group, like, you need to start there. Again, to live your values, to support, like, I'm in the junior league. I tell everybody, baby, you want to get something done, find a woman who's in the junior league. These are organizations, our chapters are over 100 years old, millions of dollars in assets. So when we talk about women who have the disposable income, who might not be politically engaged, some of our leagues actually have PACs. If you were in the New York area, the Junior League of New York, Junior League of Metro Atlanta. So I always like to shout that out, because a lot of times, people don't realize woman-led groups can have a C3 arm. They might also have a C4 arm. So if you think of like the National Women's Political Caucus, they have a state caucus. Join. It is multi-partisan. So holding membership in women's organizations, even if you're a man, Democratic women, we accept money from men for membership. Join these organizations, because where you are giving your dollars, again, tells people what you care about. And if you're not willing to be a member, a paid member, or a monthly donor, then when it comes time for you to run, you're essentially you're extracting from systems for you to gain political power with no promise of reinvesting in the system. So it's important to be cognizant of that dynamic, and to understand that a lot of the political dollars often come from membership dues that are paid into political organizations that then go on to further infrastructure and candidate support.
I appreciate that so much. And it feeds really into another question that we have from our audience. Because y'all, I hope you have heard us say many, many times, women are not monoliths. We all have intersectional identities, and we experience different things in the world and have different backgrounds and families and all sorts of things. You all should have heard us comparing our colleges and our sports before this event began. But one of our participants has asked a very real question of like, what if your current sort of social system isn't very female-based? Like, how are you cultivating that even when maybe you're not a part of women-led organizations like Planned Parenthood or like the Junior League? And shout out to my college roommate, Junior League leader, and it's her birthday today. But how do we actually develop some of these relationships when maybe we're not finding each other at the intersections of life where it just naturally happens? We're not finding each other in the PTA. We're not finding each other through other community events. How do you build that fellowship? And maybe we can speak a little bit to those values-based conversations we use so often in politics to really cultivate that. Kandice, I see you definitely thinking. I got you thinking with that one.
Yeah, because, I was thinking too, just on something my friends and I joke about, that it's harder to make friends as you get older in life, and, people start having families and stuff. And for some reason, that's something I've realized too, as women, sometimes we lose touch of some of those connections. So I was hesitant to mention this at first, but, one thing about the virtual community that's great is that there are some supportive environments sometimes that you can find. Like I said, I hesitate to mention it because there's also the crazy side, but there's also some really supportive environments that might help you be able to develop that community that you might be looking for. And even, because, for instance, I'm thinking of like Facebookers. I think Elyssa has a Facebook group. NDTC has a Facebook group that I think has some offshoots that are specifically for like women candidates. And I've seen, I think I'm kind of in a lot of them. I definitely follow Elect Black Women on Instagram, different things. So like, even if you don't know of those folks, or maybe you live in a community where you might be in a rural community and you actually just don't see a lot of people all the time, seeking it out. There is just some legwork that you have to do when you're getting ready to run, and just being intentional about that and taking the first step is important. So whoever asked that question, don't give up hope. You have, or, that you want to find these communities, and a lot of times just putting it out there, you'd be surprised how you receive things from that. So, good luck with that.
Yes, it's all about just making the space to connect over our shared values, no matter who we are and how we come to the work. So we
Can
have
I add
just a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Elyssa. Yes.
I was going to add quickly onto what Kandice said. The only other thing is that so much of being a candidate is putting yourself in places that you've never been before. So even if you feel uncomfortable, that's the job. So it's a great way to get yourself started on doing the outreach that's required to run for office. If that's something you're really interested in, just start showing up. And even if it makes you uncomfortable, it's good practice for all the other times that running for office is uncomfortable.
That's such great advice, Elyssa. I'm so glad you jumped in there. We are definitely getting to the end of our time here. We want to make sure that we have space for some final rapid fire takeaways from our amazing panelists today. But I do want to ask one additional question from the chat. So one of our participants named really speaking to that intersectional way that we experience the world. And as an older woman, often faces discrimination in the job market. And how do we think about really taking experienced women who have maybe finished their first career and are ready to step up and lead in their community and get elected to office after retirement? How have you all seen the different ways that we are perceived as women impacting our runs for office and how we can really steel ourselves towards that commitment to run and really prepare for some of the discrimination we might actually face?
Well, I always advise to have a really good cross-section of diversity on your campaign staff. Because that's the first indicator, like you have the most control over who's on your staff, who works for you. And so whenever, like I mentioned, my staff was all women, but it was not all women of color. They were not all from the South. We had women in their teens, like I had a high school student who's going to 11th grade, all the way up to, folks who were in their 80s helping on my campaign. And so I say that to say, whatever you feel like as a candidate you're missing, go get someone to be on your team who has that je ne sais quoi, because you are not perfect. We are not asking you to be perfect. You cannot be perfect. It doesn't exist. So whatever are your strengths, put that cape on, lean into that superpower. And then go find someone else who, whatever you feel like you're missing, that's their superpower. And it might be someone who works virtually. It might be someone in person. But if you're clear about what your need is, and you're clear about the compensation you're going to provide, because as women, sometimes we get real funny on campaigns about paying people and talking about money, making the ask and fundraising. Once you get clear on those things, what you will find is there is someone who wants to fill that spot on your team, who wants to see you win. And keep putting and manifesting that energy. Say it out loud, remind yourself, and acknowledge that as a team, you're looking for talent that's diverse. And you will find in this ecosystem, in this moment, there are people who want to run and fight right alongside with you.
Absolutely. Elyssa, I know organizing is all about helping identify people's self-interest and motivating on that.
Yeah.
How do you think this really shows up?
In this particular question, or do you mean in campaigns in general? It's hard to ask.
Yeah, I think in this question, like when we're bringing new people into our campaigns to fill the gaps that we might have.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it's really important for you to understand what motivates you and what motivates your community. So when Allyson talks about self-interest, in organizing, that term means someone's values and morals, what got them out of bed in the morning, why you're spending this Thursday afternoon listening to the four of us talk when you could be watching any of the other number of new releases on Netflix. There's a new season of Love is Blind tomorrow. I'm very excited. So making sure that you are doing that long-term work to understand what motivates others in your community. This can be expressed in the newspaper, but it's also going to be expressed in having these individual conversations with themselves. I also want to, if I may, push on this question just a little bit, because the majority of folks that do run for office do tend to be older. I'm sure Kandice has like actual statistics on that because Kandice works with younger people. But in some ways, and there are certain offices where it's really set up for folks who are either retired or close to being retired to even hold those seats because they're not paid or because they only meet for 3 months out of the year and any number of things. So I say that not to say that it's not a good question, but rather to say that you actually have more opportunities than you might be giving yourself credit for, given the way that our political system currently operates. So I would reframe the way you're thinking about that a little bit, if you can, to be like, this is actually a time in your life where you have the opportunity to run in ways that younger people perhaps have not had, do not have the same opportunities because they can't have a free full-time job for 3 months out of the year.
Absolutely. We all are coming at this political work at different times and places in our lives, and we all have something to offer. The world is full of people just like us, and they're looking for leaders who represent them. So before we go ahead and close out, I want to say thank you all to our participants here who put in amazing questions and our panelists who did. But I hope that we can end with just some rapid fire advice and beautiful knowledge from you women about what you hope people take away from our conversation today. So I'm going to pause and see. I don't want to put y'all on the spot, but who's ready? Who's got their final piece of advice?
I'm ready.
Oh, let's go for it, Elyssa. Do it.
I'm not normally ready, but I'm ready on this one.
Let's do it.
I think that the main thing that I would love for folks to take away is that there's lots of ways of being involved in your community and lots of ways of supporting the issues that you care about. Running for office is one of them. Helping other women run for office or other people run for office is also one of them. Building relationships in communities that are different than yours is also one of them. Figuring out how it is that you can best contribute. Often we think of running for office as being the be all end all. And I want women to run for office, and I want women of color in particular to run for office. I think it's good for our democracy. And also our democracy right now needs all of us. And that means not just thinking of elections as being the only way that you can get involved in your community. It's an incredibly important way. But to Ruby's points, to Kandice's points earlier, you need to be in relationship with community and doing this work all the time. And that's going to be a win for you, whether you win an election or even if you run for one or not. So that is my charge to all of you, is to just get started.
Thank you. I love that so much. As someone who will never run for office, I'm so here to support you brave women who are doing it.
Never.
Well, I want to just make it very personal. All of us have women in our lives that are doing things. Help them. Be proactive in providing that support, whether it's they're running for office or they are leading a protest or they're organizing a community meeting. Like, we talk about, we do a lot of these panels, we have great discussions, we talk about it. Like, as my grandma said, let's be about it. Let's, give recurring donations to folks if you're able to, because fundraising is a really big issue with a lot of women, and particularly women of color. So, put your treasure where it matters. Also, just show up and be supportive to all the women in your life, because again, like Elyssa mentioned, everybody's not going to run for office, but a lot of women are actively trying to better their communities, and we just need to show up and support them. Sometimes that is the first step in affirming someone, and maybe might be something that they remember in the future when they do get ready to run for office. So just show up and do the thing.
Absolutely. And one way you can do that for all of us before we close out with Ruby is by showing up for us and giving us feedback in the survey in the chat. So Ruby, close us out with some final great advice here.
So I tell everybody, you have to make it a priority to give money to politics if you expect politics to give money to you. You don't have to be wealthy to run for office. In some places, campaign finance, there are resources. So you need to do your research to know, but it's easier to raise if you are supporting politically, even if it's $5 a month recurring, because if you're eventually planning to be a candidate, you're not going to magically raise money overnight if you haven't been doing some type of giving and engagement politically. And at the end of the day, voters still decide elections, but a lot of data continues to show us that whoever raises the most money has the greatest advantage outside of like incumbency. So you can't hide the fact you need money. And the sooner you get out there financially supporting political causes, it gets easier when it's you're starting to run, because people can say, oh, she invested in me. I at least am happy to give back and donate what she gave to me. And so that becomes your starter money to get you going. And so that's something to think about. And if the idea of raising and handling money is not your jam, then I would not encourage you to run, because at the end of the day, you have to do call time, or you're going to have to self-fund, or you have to do some campaign finance, because it's just really difficult. Mail is not free. And so I just like to leave folks with that, because sometimes we don't make that plain and clear until a person has actually gotten their name on the ballot, that mail is not free. So you need to run and get engaged financially before you become the candidate.
Y'all, I want to say thank you so much to Kandice and Ruby and Elyssa. And I think if there's any final takeaway, I hope you all hear, it's go and say thank you to those folks who helped you get to your leadership journey, and commit to making sure that you're contributing to someone else's step up. We also have a ton of information for you at traindemocrats.org. If you are a little nervous about asking that money, go learn about what that journey looks like. Figure out if you can dig deep and have that courage to go and make that hard ask. And step up to lead in your communities. Y'all are doing the dang thing, and we are so thankful to be in community with you. Thank you all for being with us today, and we'll see you the next time.
So you might be asking yourself, now that you've decided to run for office, what's next? Well, that next step is writing a campaign plan. Our How to Write Your Political Campaign Plan training lays out what a campaign is, the components of a successful plan, and the importance of continually revisiting it. And for more training, take one of our free self-guided online courses linked in the description below. Thank you again for training with us today.